Imagine waking up to find two shadows cast on your bedroom wall. You look outside, and the sky is burning with two giant suns. It sounds like a romantic sci-fi dream straight out of Star Wars, Tatooine, right? But the physical reality of a binary star system is far more terrifying than a movie. If Earth suddenly found itself caught between our familiar yellow sun and a volatile red dwarf, you wouldn't be scaring into a peaceful binary sunset. You'd be fighting to avoid getting roasted alive or frozen solid. The truth is, life could survive this cosmic tug-of-war, but humanity and nature would have to mutate in the most bizarre, terrifying ways imaginable. Let's see if you would survive. To understand our doom, we first need to understand our new neighborhood. In the vastness of the universe, our solitary sun is actually a bit of a weirdo. The vast majority of stars out there have a partner. They are bound together in binary star systems. If Earth were dropped into one of these systems, we'd have two orbital choices. We could orbit just one star while the second star looms in the distance. That's an S-type orbit. Or we could take the Tatooine route, carving a massive path around both stars at once. This is called a P-type, or circumbinary orbit. Let's say we take the P-type path, orbiting our yellow dwarf and a newly introduced red dwarf companion. Welcome to the ultimate cosmic game of tug-of-war. Gravity is a ruthless master. With two massive stellar bodies pulling on our tiny blue dot, Earth's orbit wouldn't be a perfect, predictable circle. It would be an erratic, wobbly ellipse. This constant gravitational crossfire puts us in extreme danger. If the two stars drift too far apart, their combined gravity weakens, and Earth could be violently flung out into the freezing abyss of interstellar space. If they get too close, we get sucked right into a stellar inferno. Because of this chaos, the habitable zone, the orbital sweet spot where liquid water can exist, shrinks drastically. It becomes a razor-thin, constantly shifting tightrope. One wrong wobble, and our oceans either boil into steam or freeze down to the Marianas Trench. But let's assume Earth's orbit stabilizes on that tightrope. What would a normal Tuesday actually look like? For starters, forget about the simple blue sky. Depending on where the stars are in their orbital dance, our atmosphere would be painted in surreal gradients. The bright, blinding white-yellow light of our primary sun would aggressively mix with the deep, ominous crimson of the red dwarf. Every single object, trees, buildings, and you, would cast two distinct shadows, intersecting at bizarre angles everywhere you go. And sunsets? They would be spectacularly long and undeniably gorgeous, dragging out in a chaotic blend of orange and purple. But then comes the darkness, or rather, the lack of it. Because these two suns are constantly moving around each other, you'd frequently experience binary solar eclipses. When the dim red dwarf passes in front of the bright yellow sun, global temperatures would suddenly plummet right in the middle of the afternoon. Worse still, the very concept of night would be destroyed. Depending on the planetary alignment, you could have the yellow sun setting in the west, just as the red dwarf is rising in the east. Earth would be bathed in an eerie, eternal twilight. Without true darkness, humanity's circadian rhythm would shatter. Insomnia, mass psychosis, and severe psychological distress would become the new global pandemic. Your brain literally wouldn't know when to shut off, leaving society in a permanent state of exhausted hysteria. We would have to rely on heavily tinted artificial blackout rooms just to grab a few hours of uneasy sleep. Now, let's talk about the weather. If you thought a bad winter meant just shoveling your driveway, think again. With two suns, our standard 4 seasons would be completely erased, replaced by terrifying, unpredictable super seasons. Because Earth is navigating that wobbly, elliptical orbit we talked about earlier, our distance from the dual suns changes drastically over time. When our planet swings to the absolute furthest edge of this orbital path, both suns would appear distant and weak in the sky. Global temperatures would rapidly crash, entire oceans would freeze over, and massive glaciers would march across the continents, plunging us into a brutal, multi-year ice age where survival means hoarding every ounce of warmth. But the real nightmare begins when Earth swings back inward, making a terrifyingly close pass by the binary pair. The combined relentless heat of a yellow dwarf and a red dwarf would turn the equator into a boiling cauldron. Freshwater lakes would evaporate into thin air, and massive super hurricanes, fueled by the hyperheated oceans, would completely ravage the coastlines. And then there's the hidden, invisible killer. Red dwarfs might look small, but they are notoriously violent. They are highly active and prone to unleashing massive solar flares, colossal explosions of energy far more powerful than anything our current sun throws at us. These sudden stellar tantrums would frequently bombard Earth with lethal doses of X-rays and extreme ultraviolet radiation. Our magnetic field and ozone layer would be pushed to the absolute breaking point. Over time, they could be stripped away entirely. To survive this constant radioactive bombardment, humans couldn't just put on extra sunscreen. We would be forced to abandon the surface altogether. We would have to dig deep, building sprawling subterranean cities or constructing massive radiation-shielded domes just to stay alive. The surface of our once beautiful blue planet would become a hostile radioactive wasteland. While humanity hides underground, what happens to the natural world? Nature is incredibly resilient, but it would have to undergo a radical, horrifying transformation to survive. The first thing you'd notice is the color of the landscape. It wouldn't be green. To absorb the dim infrared light of the red dwarf, while also protecting themselves from the blinding radioactive glare of the yellow sun, plants would have to entirely change their chemistry. Forests wouldn't be lush and green. They would be pitch black, dark gray, or deep blood red. Leaves would become thick and waxy, acting as natural radiation shields. Animals would be forced to adapt at a breakneck pace or face total extinction. Because of the chaotic lighting and the lack of a true night, the entire concept of nocturnal wildlife would vanish. Predators and prey alike would need to evolve entirely new types of vision. Eyes would mutate to see clearly in the infrared spectrum, allowing them to hunt in the eerie red twilight. But the most drastic changes would come from the radiation. With the ozone layer compromised, the high levels of UV radiation would force a terrifying acceleration in natural selection. Mutation rates would skyrocket. We wouldn't just see slight changes, we'd witness the birth of bizarre new species. Animals would develop incredibly thick, armored skin, reflective scales, or even built-in biological mechanisms to constantly repair radiation damage to their DNA. The creatures roaming this new Earth would look like monsters straight out of a nightmare, perfectly engineered to endure the blistering heat and radioactive crossfire of our two suns. It would be a brutal, unforgiving ecosystem where only the absolute toughest, most heavily mutated organisms could ever hope to survive. So, does this mean humanity is completely doomed? Not necessarily. We are the ultimate adapters. While the surface might belong to armored beasts and black forests, human ingenuity would find a way. We would become a subterranean species, relying on massive underground hydroponic farms to feed our populations. Stepping outside would require heavy dune-style survival suits to block deadly radiation. Humanity would completely relocate, abandoning the scorched equator to build dense, heavily shielded megacities near the poles, where the blistering heat might actually be somewhat tolerable. Human life would survive, but human life would never be the same. The universe is vast, chaotic, and relentlessly unforgiving. Looking at what Earth would become under the scorching glare of two suns, we should consider ourselves incredibly lucky. We wake up to a single, stable, and peaceful yellow star that warms us without tearing our world apart. Our solitary sun is a rare blessing in a galaxy full of cosmic monsters. If Earth suddenly shifted into a binary star system, where would you build your survival bunker? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed surviving this terrifying scenario, hit that like button, subscribe to Star Life, and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss our next crazy cosmic countdown. Stay curious and stay safe out there.